The decision was announced in the Grand Hall of the Galactic Council, but the humans who stood there already knew what was coming. They could feel it in the cold stares, in the tightening silence, in the way every other species seemed to avoid, even making eye contact with them. The council had discussed humanity for months in secret, and now the final verdict was ready to be delivered. The hall was filled with representatives from dozens of worlds, each one watching with careful, guarded expressions. Some looked worried, some disappointed, and some almost satisfied. It was a moment everyone had expected, yet no one had fully believed would happen. The council speaker rose, its voice echoing through the chamber. It talked about unstable behavior, fast technological growth, and lack of predictable patterns. These were careful words, chosen to sound official and neutral, but everyone understood the truth. The council did not trust humans. They feared how quickly humans adapted, how fast they learned, and how often they broke limits that other species assumed were impossible. Humanity wasn't perfect, far from it, but the council didn't want to hear explanations or context. They wanted control. And humans refused to live under anyone's thumb dot, so the speaker announced the decision. Humanity would be exiled to the uncharted region beyond the known galaxy. They called it a preventive action, a way to preserve balance. But it was exile, nothing less. The humans standing in the hall did not shout, protest, or cry. They stood quietly, listening, their faces calm, but their hearts heavy. Exile meant losing everything familiar. It meant being pushed into a part of space, with no maps, no safe routes, no help. The council assumed humans would not survive long. Some species even believed humans would break apart without the support systems provided by known civilizations. When the verdict ended, the council members stepped back as if distancing themselves from a dangerous creature. The humans were escorted out by guards, not because they were a threat, but because the council wanted the scene to feel orderly. Outside the hall, the humans gathered in silence. No speeches were given. They simply exchanged glances that carried more meaning than words. They knew this was unfair. They knew this was fear dressed as law. But they also understood that arguing wouldn't change anything. Not here, not now. Within days, every human ship was forced to leave council-controlled space. The route to the frontier was long and risky. Other species watched from spaceport windows as the human convoys departed. Some looked relieved. Others looked unsure. And a few looked guilty, as if wondering whether the council had made a terrible mistake. The humans themselves stayed composed. They packed what little supplies they were allowed to take, boarded their ships, and prepared to step into the unknown dot as the last transport ship lifted off. Countless eyes followed it. Many observers expected fear, chaos, or anger from humans. Instead, something different happened. Humans worked with quiet focus. They checked their systems, shared information, organized responsibilities, and communicated calmly between ships. It didn't look like a group falling apart. It looked like a group preparing. This behavior unsettled some council members. They whispered among themselves, asking why the humans didn't panic, why they showed no signs of breakdown, why their eyes looked determined instead of hopeless. But the council convinced itself that this was just human stubbornness, a temporary show of strength. Once the humans reached the empty frontier, they would face harsh reality. The council believed the unknown region had nothing to offer, no resources, no stable systems, no safe planets. They told themselves the exile was practically harmless. Nature would handle the rest. The journey itself took weeks, crossing deep, black space with few stars and almost no known signals. At first, there was sadness in the human ships. People looked out the windows at the shrinking lights of the galaxy they once called home. They weren't crying, but the loss was felt. Generations had lived under the council's structure. Many humans had friends among other species. They had built relationships, businesses, research teams, and dreams inside that shared space. And now it was all gone in a single announcement. But humans have always been strange in one specific way. They process pain quickly and turn it into momentum. By the time the convoy passed the final border beacon, the mood had shifted. They began focusing on what lay ahead rather than what they left behind. They didn't know what they would find. They didn't know if there were habitable systems. They didn't know if they would survive at all. Yet they worked. They analyzed star charts, scanned the void, checked the structural integrity of their ships, and discussed how to create a new life, no matter how impossible it sounded. The uncharted region was not as empty as the council claimed. The first signs appeared in the form of strange readings, massive structures hidden inside nebulae, dormant stations older than anything in known space, and planets with unusual energy fields. At first, humans thought they were errors. But the deeper they traveled, the more they realized they were discovering something extraordinary. The humans set up temporary camps on a barren moon near a cluster of ancient ruins. They studied everything carefully, approaching it the way humans always do, curious, cautious, but excited. They had been pushed away, but instead of collapsing, they were already adapting. Engineers set up small labs. Technicians repaired aging equipment with whatever they could salvage. Farmers and life support teams worked together to create sustainable food cycles. Everyone took part, everyone helped, everyone united. What surprised them most was how quickly cooperation grew. There were no political arguments, no long debates, no competing agendas. Exile had erased many old divisions. Survival required unity, and unity gave them strength. One person's idea became everyone's project. One person's discovery became the entire community's progress. It wasn't perfect humans argued as they always do, but the arguments led to solutions instead of bitterness. The frontier forced them to become their best version. In those early weeks, a quiet but powerful realization began spreading through the human population. Exile was not the end. It was the beginning of a new chapter they never expected. For the first time, they weren't living under someone else's rules, someone else's limits. They were free to build in their own way, at their own pace, with their own vision. And deep inside, many humans felt something they hadn't felt in a long time: hope, mixed with determination. Back in council space, news filters and gossip networks picked up strange rumors. Travelers near the frontier claimed they saw human ships building something massive. Others said humans were mapping unknown energy sources. A few even suggested that exile had not weakened them. It had motivated them. Most council members dismissed these stories as exaggerations. They thought humans were simply trying to survive. They could not imagine humans growing stronger, but the humans knew the truth. The council had tried to remove them from the galaxy, but they had instead opened a door to something far bigger. The humans didn't forget the pain of exile, but they didn't let it poison their future either. Instead, they made a silent promise among themselves. If the galaxy didn't want them, they would shape their own destiny in the frontier. No one in the council could have predicted the simple truth forming in those early months. Humans were not afraid of the unknown. They were built for it. And as the first foundations of their new life took shape on that forgotten moon, their future began shifting in a direction no one could have imagined. The first months in the silent frontier were confusing, difficult, and strangely exciting for the humans. They had been pushed out of known space, but instead of collapsing, they found themselves surrounded by possibilities no one had expected. When they first landed on that barren moon, the ground was rough, the air thin, and the environment cold, yet everyone moved with a purpose. They had no choice but to work together. Survival demanded it. Every morning, groups woke up early even, though they barely slept. Sleep rarely comes easily when the future is uncertain. The scientists checked scanners and energy readings. The engineers inspected the machinery to keep it running. The families and workers set up small shelters and shared food supplies. No one complained. No one waited for someone else to fix things. Everyone understood that their life depended on teamwork. The strange ruins scattered across the frontier became the main focus. At first, humans thought the structures were natural formations. But the deeper they looked, the clearer it became. These were not rocks or random debris. These were buildings, machinery, and giant metal frames fused with the landscape. Some ruins were so large that they rose like dark mountains. Others were hidden underground, covered by dust from thousands of years. People walked among them with mixed feelings. There was fear, curiosity, and wonder. Whoever had lived here before must have been incredibly advanced. The materials were nothing like anything found in council space. Some surfaces were smooth like glass, but harder than any metal. Other parts emitted faint energy, even though they looked broken. The ruins felt old, almost forgotten by time, yet they still held power. Humans decided to study everything carefully. They sent small teams to explore the sites. They documented every detail, scanned every corner, and took samples for research. What surprised them most was how quickly they began making progress. Human minds work differently from other species. Where others hesitated or played safe, humans tested ideas, experimented boldly, and accepted risk as part of learning. And the frontier rewarded that mindset. One afternoon, a group discovered a huge circular structure half buried in dust. It looked like a ring the size of a city. Most of it was collapsed, but one small section still glowed with a soft blue light. When the engineers approached it, their equipment started reacting energy levels. Magnetic patterns, frequencies all shifted. No one could explain it at first, but the feeling was strong. They had found something important. They did not activate it or force it open. Humans had learned from their past mistakes in council space not to rush into unknown technology. Instead, they built a simple research station near the site. They repaired old devices, connected scanners, and spent days studying the structure. Slowly, patterns began forming. It wasn't exactly a machine, and it wasn't just a building. It was something in between, maybe a gateway, maybe a generator, maybe something completely different. The mystery motivated them further. While this research continued, a different group focused on building the first human settlement. They used leftover materials from their ships to create temporary modules. They installed solar panels, water recycling units, and simple farms inside dome structures. It wasn't luxurious, but it was enough. They grew vegetables, kept small livestock, and created energy-efficient living spaces. Kids played inside the domes, workers repaired tools outside, and traders set up makeshift markets. Slowly, the settlement began to feel like a community. Food was rationed at first, but no one complained. Humans had experienced worse in there. History, famines, wars, migrations, disasters. Compared to those, this frontier was a chance to start fresh. People reminded each other that they weren't running away. They had been forced out, but they refused to be victims. That mindset became the quiet strength of their new society. As days turned into weeks, the humans realized something unusual. Their technology was behaving differently here. Simple devices like scanners and communication units started working at longer ranges. Engines became more efficient. Even old batteries held power longer than usual. At first, they thought it was luck, but the scientists soon discovered that the energy field covering the frontier was special. It was rich, dense, and incredibly stable. The council had always called this region empty, but they were wrong. It wasn't empty at all. It was full of potential. This discovery changed everything. The engineering team decided to test the energy field further. They built small drones and launched them into the deeper parts of the frontier. The drones traveled farther than expected and sent back detailed maps of asteroid belts, strange metallic clusters, and abandoned stations floating in the dark. It was like someone had left behind a playground of forgotten worlds. Humans didn't know who the builders were, but they knew one thing. The frontier had resources far beyond anything the Council had. With these new resources, the settlement expanded faster than anyone predicted. Humans mined the asteroids and extracted rare metals. They built factories inside hollowed-out rocks and created new tools from scratch. Their ships, once old and damaged, were repaired, upgraded, and improved. People who once worked normal jobs. Back in Council territory, teachers, merchants, medical workers learned new skills. They trained as engineers, builders, pilots, researchers. Everyone contributed. The changes were so rapid that even the humans themselves were surprised. What the Council thought would be a punishment became an opportunity. Exile pushed humans into a corner, but that corner opened into a vast, unexplored universe filled with knowledge and resources. But progress didn't erase their emotions. At night, when the settlement was quiet and the stars shone across the dark sky, people sat outside their domes and thought about the life they lost. Some missed old friends. Some missed the busy streets, the familiar planets, the normal routines. Others wondered whether the Council would ever regret their decision. A few wished for a chance to prove themselves someday, not through war, but through success. The humans didn't want revenge. They wanted recognition, fairness, and a place they could call home. Despite the emotional weight, they moved forward. That was the human way. The drive to improve life, even in harsh conditions, had always been part of their nature. And in the frontier, this drive was stronger than ever. A major turning point came when a group of scientists figured out how to power one of the ancient systems they found. It started with a weak pulse, barely noticeable. Then, slowly, the pulse grew stronger. Lights flickered across the old structure, revealing markings and patterns carved into its surface. The air around it changed, creating a gentle vibration that felt almost alive. When they realized the system wasn't dangerous, the entire settlement celebrated. It was the first major breakthrough, and it opened the doors to many more discoveries. The more humans explored, the more they found evidence that the frontier was once home to a massive, advanced civilization. The ruins weren't just random structures. They were parts of cities, research hubs, and transportation networks. Some appeared to be energy farms. Others looked like defense systems or communication towers. Many were still active in small ways, waiting for someone to understand them again. Humans felt a strange connection to these forgotten builders. They didn't know who they were or why they had disappeared, but there was a sense of shared purpose. Whoever created this place must have valued knowledge, exploration, and technology, just like humans did. Maybe that was why the frontier reacted positively to human presence. Maybe it was fate, or maybe it was just the human ability to adapt. Months passed, and the small settlement transformed into a growing civilization. The people built roads between research sites, created schools to teach new skills, and established councils for decision-making. Despite their exile, they held onto fairness and unity. Even disagreements were solved through discussion and compromise. They didn't want to repeat the mistakes of the council they left behind. And slowly, the humans realized something powerful. Exile didn't break them, it shaped them. The frontier pushed them to innovate, cooperate, and dream bigger than ever before. They stopped thinking of themselves as exiles. They started seeing themselves as pioneers. What they didn't know, however, was that far away in council space, Rumors about their progress were spreading again. Some travelers claimed they saw strange human ships moving faster than before. Others said humans were building massive structures in the unknown region. But the council refused to believe any of it. They thought humans were barely surviving, not thriving. But the truth was clear to every human living in the frontier. This was only the beginning. And whatever came next, they were ready to face it together. The frontier changed the humans faster than anyone expected, even faster than the humans themselves understood. What started as a desperate effort to survive became something far more meaningful. Every day brought new discoveries, new opportunities, and new questions. The ruins spread across the region were not simple abandoned structures. They were clues to a massive, old civilization that once lived beyond the reach of the Galactic Council. Whoever they were, they had built things far more advanced than anything the modern galaxy knew. And strangely, humans seemed to understand their technology better than any other species. Might have thought the researchers didn't start with big plans. They approached everything step by step. They touched nothing they didn't study first. They were careful because they had learned the cost of rushing into unknown things. Still, it didn't take long before one discovery lifted their progress into a new level. It happened when a team managed to power up a small part of one of the ancient stations. The moment it activated, the metal walls lit up with smooth lines of light, as if the station was waking from a long sleep. The lights were calm, warm, and steady. The air carried a soft vibration, and the faint sound of something humming in the walls told them the system was alive, just waiting for someone to understand it. The humans didn't know the full purpose of the system, but they realized one thing: the station was adjusting to them. It responded to their touch, their machines, their energy signatures. That alone was shocking. For a moment, the researchers simply stared at the glowing lines, unsure whether to celebrate or worry. But they got over their shock quickly. Humans had always been good at adapting. They set up a larger research camp around the station. More people arrived: technicians, engineers, scientists, workers, volunteers. Even those with no technical background helped by clearing debris, carrying supplies, or documenting everything they saw. Everyone wanted to be part of the new chapter, unfolding in front of them. Day after day, they explored deeper into the ancient structures. They found rooms with strange symbols on the walls, circular chambers with platforms that floated above the ground, and hallways that seemed to change temperature and light as humans walked through them. The more they explored, the more they realized that the builders of this place were beyond anything the Galactic Council ever taught or recorded. Soon, the humans discovered something even bigger. The ruins were connected, not just in design, but physically. There were underground tunnels linking different structures. There were energy pathways running beneath the surface like buried rivers of power. And in the far distance, they detected signals from other massive structures, some the size of entire cities. This changed everything. The humans began mapping the areas around the moon. They sent drones into the tunnels, satellites into orbit, and teams across the surface to explore nearby ruins. Every new route revealed more pieces of technology. Some were broken, others were operational, and a few were simply too advanced to understand yet. But they weren't discouraged. That was the interesting part. Humans enjoyed solving difficult things. During these months of discovery, something else happened quietly. The human settlement started to turn into something that looked like the foundation of a new civilization. The temporary domes became permanent structures. The small research bases grew into fully equipped centers. New factories opened in the mines, carved into asteroids. New ships were built using materials no one had worked with before. The ships were different from anything humans had made in council space. They were lighter but stronger, faster but more stable. Some didn't even use traditional fuel. They used energy harvested from the frontier itself. When the engineers tested one of the new prototypes, the ship moved so smoothly it felt like it was gliding through space with almost no resistance. It shocked everyone. Someone whispered, "The Council has no idea what we're building out here." And it was true. The Council thought humans were living in broken ships and struggling to survive. They had no idea humans were unlocking technology that shouldn't even exist. As more ruins awakened and more systems inside them powered on, a theory started forming among the researchers. They believed the old civilization wasn't destroyed, it simply left. The ruins weren't battle-scarred or damaged by conflict. They were worn down by time. It looked as if the builders prepared the frontier to be used by someone who came later. And humans felt, strangely, like they were the ones meant to find it. This idea spread quietly through the community. People didn't say it out loud often, but they felt it in their hearts. Maybe this frontier wasn't a disaster. Maybe it was a gift. Maybe Exile had accidentally guided humans to the greatest discovery in their entire history. But the frontier wasn't just changing technology. It was changing the people themselves. Living without the Council's rules made them more united. They discussed everything openly. They created councils where workers, scientists, and families all had a voice. They argued sometimes, but the arguments ended with solutions, not bitterness. There were no elites or powerful classes. Everyone worked, everyone struggled, everyone dreamed. This unity gave them something very rare, a society built on fairness, curiosity, and shared purpose. With each passing month, they grew more confident. They expanded to nearby moons, building outposts and farms. They rebuilt abandoned transport systems found inside the ruins. They started using the ancient tunnels to move materials faster. And on top of that, they discovered a massive structure floating in deep space, a giant circular frame that might have once been a portal or transportation hub. The moment they found it, excitement spread across the entire human population. A structure that massive meant the ancient builders had technology that could move ships, energy, or maybe even entire planets. Some people suggested leaving it alone for safety. Others believed it could be the key to understanding the entire frontier. In the end, they decided to explore it slowly and safely, no rushing. The mapping teams were sent in larger numbers. They flew through the frame, scanned the edges, studied the patterns carved into the metal. The more they studied, the more the frame seemed alive. Like the station on the moon, it reacted to human presence. Parts of it glowed softly when touched. Certain panels opened when scanned with human-made devices. It was as if the technology recognized something in humans that other species didn't have. This was the moment when a quiet realization began forming in the minds of the engineers and scientists. Maybe humans weren't just adapting to frontier technology. Maybe the technology was adapting to humans. That thought sent a chill through the team, but not in a fearful way. More like awe. Back in the expanding settlement, new schools opened. Children were taught history, science, engineering, and the story of how humanity reached the frontier. Teachers reminded them that exile did not define them. Their actions now defined who they were and who they would become. Adults did their best to stay positive, even when life was hard. Supplies sometimes ran low. Weather on new moons could be unpredictable. Machines broke down. People got tired. But the hope of building something greater always pushed them forward. And wherever someone turned, there was always new work to do, new tools to build, new ruins to map, new discoveries to study. It kept the entire population busy, engaged, and determined. Meanwhile, unknown to the humans, a few traders and travelers who passed near the frontier began spreading stories in council space. They spoke of strange glowing structures, improved human ships, and energy signatures never seen before. At first, people laughed at these stories. They said humans were probably struggling, not building wonders, but the rumors grew louder. Some council members started feeling uneasy. But back in the frontier, the humans didn't know or care what the council thought. Their focus was on progress. Day by day, they pieced together the puzzle of the ancient technology. Piece by piece, they learned to merge their own knowledge with what the ruins offered. They didn't realize it yet, but they were on the verge of creating something the galaxy had never seen, a new empire, not built through force, but through discovery, unity, and the incredible power of the human spirit. And the incredible truth was becoming clearer with every new breakthrough. The Council had exiled them to weaken them, but instead, they had just pushed humanity into a place where they could grow beyond anyone's imagination. The humans in the frontier had grown used to progress, coming in quiet steps, one discovery at a time, one repaired ruin at a time, one upgraded ship at a time. But the event that finally pulled them back into the galaxy's attention didn't begin with a massive discovery. It started with something small, something almost ordinary. A single human exploration vessel was traveling deeper into the frontier, far beyond the familiar ruins and energy fields. It was a smooth silver ship shaped more like a flowing arc than a machine. It moved so quietly through space that even the crew sometimes forgot how fast they were traveling. The ship was equipped with new propulsion, new sensors, and new shielding technology. Built with the knowledge they gained from the ancient stations, the crew was on a routine mapping mission. Their task was simple: mark the edges of the frontier, scan distant objects, and study the strange signals that came from deeper regions. They didn't expect anything unusual to happen. After all, the humans had been alone in this part of the galaxy since the day they were exiled. But as the ship glided through the darkness, the scanner lights suddenly brightened. The readings shifted, showing signs of movement, small, fast objects approaching from a direction humans usually avoided. For a moment, the crew thought it might be debris or natural objects. But soon they realized it was something else. These were ships, real ships, and not human. Their hearts tightened. It had been years since humans saw another species up close. For so long, they had lived in silence, hidden behind the frontier's distance and mystery. Now someone had entered their new space. Before anyone could react, a set of Council patrol ships appeared from behind a cluster of rocks. Their design was unmistakable: sharp angles, blue metallic armor, rotating sensor discs. The kind of ships that once made humans feel watched, judged, and unwelcome. Only now, the humans were not the same people the Council had forced out long ago. The patrol ships were scanning everything in sight, trying to understand what they were looking at. The humans watched quietly, unsure if they should reveal themselves or stay hidden. Their ship looked nothing like the old models the Council remembered. It had no fuel exhaust trails, no engine roar, no heavy metals rattling under stress. It moved with a calm, silent confidence. It wasn't built to show off. It was built to endure. The human crew knew they had to contact the settlement immediately. Their communication officer sent a signal back home, a short message that traveled through the frontier's energy network faster than any Council technology ever could. Within minutes, leaders in the settlement gathered to discuss what to do next. Some people were nervous. Others were excited. A few were angry. They remembered the humiliation of exile, the cold silence of the Council chambers, the way humanity had been dismissed as unpredictable troublemakers. But the leaders reminded everyone, we didn't survive exile to start a fight we don't need. The humans had changed. They had grown stronger not to conquer, but to build. They wanted peace, even if the galaxy hadn't given them any before. Back near the patrol ships, the human exploration vessel finally revealed itself. It slowly approached the council ships, letting its lights glow softly so it would not appear threatening. Inside the council ships, confusion spread quickly. They had never seen a ship like this. Their scanners struggled to understand its structure. Their engines hummed nervously as they repositioned, unsure whether this new arrival was a danger. The human ship sent a gentle signal, a simple greeting. Nothing complex, nothing aggressive. Just a confirmation that they were there and willing to speak. The council ships hesitated before responding. When they finally answered, their voice carried tension. They wanted to know why humans were in this region, why their ship looked so advanced, and how they had survived exile. The human crew shared the truth with calm honesty. They explained that they had been exploring, building, learning. They said the frontier gave them a fresh start. They also said they had no intention of hiding or fighting. They were simply living in the space they were forced into. The council patrol was stunned. Their orders had always described the frontier as lifeless, dangerous, and impossible to survive in. They were told humans wouldn't last more than a few years. But the people now speaking to them sounded confident, focused, and organized. Their ship looked like it belonged to a civilization far beyond anything the council had ever expected. The patrol's commander didn't know how to respond. For a moment, silence filled the space between them. Then, the commander asked if they could see more ships, more technology, more signs of human survival. The human crew didn't give an immediate answer. Instead, they contacted their settlement again. After discussions, the leaders decided they would not hide. If the galaxy discovers us, one leader said, let it be through honesty, not fear. But they also understood one important thing. They had to be careful. They didn't know how the council would react. The council was powerful, and powerful groups did not always like surprises. Eventually, the humans invited the council patrol to follow them at a safe distance. They guided the patrol toward one of the frontier's smaller outposts, not the main settlement, not the massive stations, just a simple research base. The humans didn't want to reveal everything at once. As the ships approached the outpost, the council pilots lost their composure. They stared at the massive structures rising from the rocky surface, tall buildings made of smooth shine, glowing energy lines running across the ground, ships floating above landing pads using technology the council had never seen. Everything was clean, organized, efficient. Everything looked peaceful, yet powerful. One council officer whispered, "Humans built this?" The human crew remained polite. They explained that everything was constructed through hard work, unity, and the INI technology they discovered in the frontier. They didn't brag. They didn't threaten. They simply shared the truth. But even the simplest truth shook the council patrol more than any threat could have. They realized that the humans hadn't just adapted, they had evolved. The frontier didn't break them. It transformed them. The patrol ships recorded everything: the buildings, the ships, the energy fields, the human workers walking calmly through the base, as if such miracles were normal. And the council officers stared at all, feeling a rising confusion in their hearts. The patrol wanted answers. How did humans learn this fast? How did they survive without council support? What kind of technology were they using? The humans only gave calm explanations. They talked about recycling, energy harvesting, teamwork, and patience. They didn't mention the deeper mysteries. They didn't mention the ancient civilization whose ruins lay across the frontier. They didn't mention the massive circular frame floating in deep space. They didn't mention the systems that came alive when touched by human hands. They kept those secrets quiet. After some hours, the patrol left. They said they needed to report everything to the council. Their voices shook slightly as they spoke. It wasn't fear. It was disbelief. The humans watched them disappear into the distance. No one celebrated, no one cheered. Instead, they quietly continued their work. They knew the galaxy had changed in that moment. The Council now knew humanity had not just survived, they had surpassed expectations in every way. And humanity knew this could bring both opportunity and danger not far away. In Council territory, panic began to rise as the patrol's report spread among officials. For years, they had assumed the exile wiped out human progress. For years, they believed they had removed a problem from the galaxy. Now, suddenly, they learned that humans had created something powerful, brilliant, and completely beyond their control. Emergency meetings were called. Debates erupted. Some leaders wanted to approach the humans with caution and diplomacy. Others wanted to treat them as a threat. A few were simply afraid not of war, but of being left behind, technologically and socially. And while the Council argued, whispered, and worried, humans in the frontier continued building quietly, not out of pride or ambition, but out of the simple desire to make something better. They didn't know how the Council would react next. They didn't know if peace or conflict would follow. But they knew one thing for certain. The days of being ignored, judged, or underestimated were over. The galaxy now saw them again. And this time, humans were not the same people they were when they were exiled. They were something far greater. The moment the Council patrol returned with the story of what they had seen, the entire galaxy shifted into a strange kind of silence. Every major species, every leader, every strategist suddenly stopped whatever they were doing. They all knew the story of the humans, the exiled ones, the species they had thrown out of known space long ago because they were considered too unpredictable, too bold, too emotional, too fast in their innovations. Many had assumed that humans would eventually fade away, struggle, maybe form a few small colonies, and then dissolve into the empty edges of the galaxy. But the report broke that old imagination. The patrol described gigantic stations floating, like living mountains, ships that didn't seem to burn fuel or push air. They simply moved, smooth and silent, like they were bending space around them. They described the human explorers who appeared calm, collected, and surprisingly gentle despite their abilities. They described how the humans had built something far beyond the Council's understanding. And this was the moment the Council realized. They had made a mistake that could not be undone. The Council chamber filled with representatives from every major species. Some were restless. Some avoided eye contact. Some were silently angry, not at humans, but at themselves. And some still believed humans were a threat, because they now held power that no one could measure. Every seat around the circular platform flickered with anxious energy. For the first time in decades, the Council ordered a full emergency meeting, not for war, not for punishment, but because no one knew how to handle what was coming. The main question in everyone's mind was simple. What do the humans want now? For many days, debates filled the chamber. There were three groups inside the Council. One group believed the humans would seek revenge. They argued that no species could be exiled, pushed away, treated unfairly, and then simply return with kindness. They warned that the humans might now want to take the galaxy for themselves. Another group insisted that humans had grown past that. They pointed out how the patrol ship was not harmed, not chased, not threatened. They explained that the humans, despite their power, chose calm communication instead of fear. The third group believed the humans wanted nothing at all, that they were simply exploring and had no interest in the Council anymore. But this was the smallest group. Deep down, everyone knew that the humans would not simply ignore the galaxy that once pushed them away. The debates continued until the chamber lights dimmed, signaling an incoming priority message. Every representative turned toward the floating display. No one knew what to expect. Some feared it was a warning from the humans. Some thought it might be a fleet entering council space, but it was neither. It was a simple message, translated into hundreds of galactic languages. A calm voice said, "We have returned. Not for revenge, but for balance." The chamber fell completely silent. The voice did not sound angry or proud or threatening. It sounded steady, almost peaceful, like someone who understood the weight of history but chose to step above it. The message continued. "We remember what happened. We remember why we were sent away. But our journey changed us. We built something new, something that taught us what unity really means. We do not come to claim what is yours. We come to offer a path to a better future for everyone." When the message ended, the chamber was still silent. Representatives looked at each other, unsure how to react. The words were simple, but they carried a power that everyone could feel. Some felt relieved, some felt afraid, some felt ashamed. But everyone knew the galaxy would no longer be the same. In the days that followed, the humans didn't rush into council space. They didn't send fleets. They didn't demand anything. Instead, they sent small groups of explorers and diplomats, each one carrying no weapons, no threats. Their ships glided in quietly and settled near neutral zones. They waited with patience, giving the council time to think, time to choose what kind of future they wanted. The galaxy watched with fascination as these peaceful envoys interacted with smaller species first. Many of the smaller species had always been overlooked by the council. They had been given little support, little influence. But when the humans approached them, they treated them with respect and curiosity. The smaller species quickly began to warm toward humanity, sharing stories of hardship and hope. They found the humans relatable, not perfect, but trying their best. Humanity listened to them, learned from them, and made promises to help them grow stronger too. This made the larger council species even more nervous. They realized the humans were not trying to conquer. They were trying to build relationships in places the council had ignored, which meant humans could become a central force in the galaxy without even lifting a finger. Meanwhile, in their own new empire, humans continued building, exploring, and discovering technology that felt impossible to other species. Their cities were powered by clean and abundant energy sources. Their starships could travel great distances in moments. Their society had become more unified, more stable, and more deeply connected than ever before. And yet, despite all this progress, the humans chose not to isolate themselves. They opened channels of communication. They welcomed visitors, though only in supervised areas, because they knew their technology could overwhelm or confuse outsiders. Visitors returned with stories of stunning beauty, advanced systems, and a culture they had learned from centuries of struggle. Eventually, the council representatives knew they had to reach a decision. After weeks of discussion, they agreed to invite human leaders to a neutral meeting. It would be the first official face-to-face conversation since the day humans were exiled. The meeting did not start with shouting or accusations. It started slowly, with careful words. The council apologized, not fully, not in every detail, but enough to show they understood what had happened. They admitted they had acted too quickly in the past. They admitted they had judged humanity too harshly. The humans listened without anger. They explained their side, how the exile had pushed them to grow, how the silent frontier forced them to unite in ways they never expected. They said they still remembered the pain, but they had no desire to repeat old cycles. They had moved forward, and they hoped the galaxy could do the same. By the end of the meeting, both sides understood that they were standing at a turning point. The galaxy could either continue holding on to fear and suspicion, or it could learn from the humans' transformation. Slowly, cautiously, alliances began to form. The council asked for human guidance in understanding old megastructures in unknown regions of space. Humans offered help, but always with fairness and patience. They answered questions, shared safe levels of technology, and encouraged cooperation between species. The more the galaxy interacted with the humans, the more they realized something important. Humanity wasn't trying to be the strongest. They were trying to be the bridge. They had experienced being pushed away, misunderstood, doubted, and instead of choosing anger, they chose growth. Their new empire wasn't built on control, but on the idea that every step forward is easier when taken together. And this was the moment the galaxy finally understood the truth. By exiling humanity, the Council didn't weaken them. They accidentally unlocked their greatest potential. Humans became the species that could connect worlds, guide civilizations, and open paths that no one else could imagine. Their empire stretched beyond the edges of known maps, but their hearts stayed focused on unity. In the end, the galaxy realized that the humans' return wasn't a threat. It was a second chance, a chance to build a future where no species would be judged by fear, no voice would be ignored, and no world would stand alone. And quietly, almost humbly, humanity stepped into that role, not as conquerors, not as victims, but as the proof that even in exile, a species can rise higher than anyone ever believed.